Mira had always been a devoted wife. Her days spent managing her modest boutique and her evenings, dedicated to her husband, Aaron, who worked long hours as a marketing executive. Aaron's boss, Victor Langston, was a charismatic and sharply dressed man in his late 40s, known for his suave demeanor and knack for closing deals. Victor had a way of commanding attention, a trait that Mira noticed the first time she met him at one of Aaron's company events. That evening, Mira found herself drawn into a conversation with Victor. His voice was smooth, his words carefully chosen, and his compliments subtly laced with charm. "You must be the inspiration behind Aaron's tireless work ethic," he had said, his eyes lingering on hers a moment longer than necessary. It was a fleeting interaction, but it lingered in Mira's mind long after. Weeks passed, and Victor began to show a peculiar interest in Mira. He would occasionally ask Aaron to invite her to corporate gatherings or subtly inquire about her boutique during office conversations. Aaron, oblivious to Victor's intentions, viewed this as a sign of professional admiration. One afternoon, while Mira was arranging displays at her boutique, a black luxury car pulled up outside. Victor stepped out, his presence commanding as always. "I was in the area and thought I'd stop by to see the famous boutique Aaron speaks so highly of," he said with a disarming smile. Mira was caught off guard but welcomed him in. As they spoke, Victor's compliments became more personal. He admired her creativity, her beauty, and her ability to support Aaron. "It's rare to see such dedication," he remarked, his voice low and sincere. Mira felt a flutter of warmth at his words, but she quickly dismissed it, reminding herself of her commitment to Aaron. Victor's visits to the boutique became frequent. Sometimes he'd bring flowers, claiming they were for the store. Other times he'd linger, sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. His vulnerability surprised Mira, painting a different picture of the powerful businessman she thought she knew. Slowly, an emotional connection began to form, one she couldn't ignore. The turning point came one evening when Victor hosted a dinner at his sprawling mansion for Aaron's team. Mira attended reluctantly, aware of the growing tension within her. As the evening progressed, Victor found subtle ways to steal moments with her, a lingering touch as he handed her a glass of wine, a whispered compliment as they passed in the hallway. Later that night, Mira stepped onto the balcony to escape the crowd. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and the cool breeze calmed her racing thoughts. Victor appeared beside her, his presence both comforting and unsettling. "You seem lost in thought," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't be here," she replied, her voice trembling. "But you are," he said, turning to face her. "And I think we both know why." Mira felt her resolve weakening as Victor leaned closer. The moment was electric, charged with the weight of unspoken desires and forbidden possibilities. When his lips met hers, she didn't pull away. The affair began cautiously, with stolen moments and secret rendezvous. Victor's charm and attentiveness were intoxicating, offering Mira an escape from the monotony of her routine. Yet guilt gnawed at her, a constant reminder of the betrayal she was committing. Meanwhile, Aaron started noticing changes in Mira. She seemed distracted, her laughter forced, her affection distant. Unbeknownst to her, he began to suspect something was amiss. One evening, while Mira was out, Aaron found a receipt for an expensive bracelet in her handbag, a bracelet he had never seen her wear. Determined to uncover the truth, Aaron confronted Mira. "Is there someone else?" he demanded, his voice laced with pain and anger. Mira hesitated, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. "Aaron, she began, but before she could confess, her phone buzzed. Victor's name flashed on the screen. Aaron's face hardened as realization dawned. "Victor, my boss? How long has this been going on?" Mira broke down, confessing everything. The revelation shattered Aaron, but instead of rage, he was eerily calm. "You've made your choice," he said, walking out the door. The next day, Aaron confronted Victor at the office. The tension was palpable, the once friendly dynamic replaced by hostility. "You may have stolen my wife," Aaron said coldly. "But you won't ruin my career." Victor, unfazed, replied, "What happens between Mira and me is none of your concern. Let's keep this professional." But Aaron wasn't done. He began gathering evidence of Victor's misconduct at work, shady deals, misuse of company funds, and inappropriate relationships with employees. When he presented his findings to the board, Victor was forced to resign, his reputation in tatters. Mira, caught between the fallout of her affair and the devastation she caused, found herself alone. Victor's charm faded as his world crumbled, and Aaron, despite his heartbreak, refused to take her back. In the end, Mira was left to confront the consequences of her actions. Her once perfect life reduced to memories of betrayal and regret. Mira sat alone in her boutique late into the night, the lights dimmed and the mannequins casting ghostly shadows on the walls. Her mind replayed the events of the past few weeks on a loop. Victor's magnetic presence, the exhilarating rush of their secret meetings, and Aaron's pained expression as he walked out of their home. She couldn't shake the weight of what she had done, and yet, part of her still longed for Victor's intoxicating company. Victor, on the other hand, was unraveling. The once unshakable businessman found himself cornered on all fronts. The board's decision to oust him had been swift and brutal, leaving him scrambling to maintain his public image. He called Mira incessantly, his smooth confidence replaced by desperation. "I need to see you," he would say, his voice trembling. Mira, torn between guilt and loyalty to the man who had risked everything for her, agreed to meet him one evening at an upscale hotel outside the city. When she arrived, Victor was pacing the room, a drink in his hand. His usually impeccable suit was wrinkled, and his hair slightly disheveled. "They're trying to ruin me," he said, his eyes flashing with anger. "Aaron's behind this. He's feeding the board lies about me." Mira hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "Maybe it's best if we step back from this," she said cautiously. "Everything is falling apart, Victor." He rounded on her, his expression darkening. "Are you regretting us? After everything we've been through?" His voice was sharp, but there was an undercurrent of vulnerability that stopped her from walking out. "I don't know," Mira admitted. "I've hurt Aaron, and now you're losing everything because of me. I don't know how to fix this." Victor softened, stepping closer and taking her hands in his. "Mira, you're the only thing keeping me sane right now. Don't leave me." His words were heartfelt, but they felt like a weight pulling her deeper into the chaos. The following days were a blur of tension and uncertainty. Aaron, who had moved out of their shared home, avoided Mira's calls. She visited his temporary apartment one afternoon, desperate to speak with him, but he refused to let her in. "We have nothing to talk about," he said through the door, his voice hollow. "Aaron, please," she pleaded. "I made a mistake, but I still care about you. I need to make this right." "You can't," he said simply before the sound of the deadbolt clicking shut ended the conversation. Meanwhile, Victor's situation worsened. Rumors of his affair with Mira began circulating among his former colleagues, tarnishing his already fragile reputation. Aaron, who had been gathering evidence of Victor's financial misconduct, discovered a hidden account linked to company funds. He presented this to the board, ensuring Victor's complete downfall. Victor, now isolated and bitter, turned to Mira for solace. "We can start over," he told her one evening as they sat in his dimly lit apartment. "Leave this town with me. We'll build a new life somewhere else." But Mira hesitated. The idea of leaving everything behind felt like running away from her problems, rather than facing them. "I don't know if I can," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor's expression darkened. "You're all I have left, Mira," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Don't abandon me." As the weeks passed, Mira's once clear emotions grew murkier. Victor's charm had begun to wear thin, replaced by a possessiveness that unsettled her. He became increasingly erratic, showing up unannounced at her boutique and calling her at odd hours. She started to feel trapped, unsure of how to extricate herself from the mess she had created. One evening, as Mira closed up her boutique, she noticed a car parked across the street. The headlights flicked on as she stepped outside, and the car began to follow her as she walked to her own vehicle. Panic set in as she quickened her pace, fumbling with her keys. The car pulled up beside her, and the window rolled down. "Mira," Aaron's voice called out. She froze, relief washing over her. "Aaron, what are you doing here?" "I needed to talk to you," he said, stepping out of the car. His face was lined with exhaustion, but there was a determination in his eyes. "Get in, let's go somewhere private." They drove in silence to a nearby park, the tension between them palpable. When they finally stopped, Aaron turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Why, Mira? Why did you do it?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I felt lost and Victor made me feel seen. But I never meant to hurt you, Aaron. I never stopped loving you." Aaron looked away, his jaw tightening. "You destroyed everything we had," he said quietly. But Victor didn't care about you, Mira. He only used you to fill whatever void he has in his own life. Mira shook her head. It wasn't like that at first. He made me feel alive. Do you still feel that way? Aaron asked, his gaze piercing. Mira hesitated, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. No, she admitted. I don't know who I am anymore. Aaron sighed, running a hand through his hair. I can't forgive you, Mira, he said finally. But I don't want to see you ruin your life over someone like Victor. The next day, Mira made a decision. She met Victor at his apartment, her heart heavy with resolve. I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice trembling. I need to find myself again, and I can't do that with you. Victor's face darkened, his hands clenching into fists. You're leaving me? After everything I've sacrificed for you? I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. But this isn't love. This is destruction. Victor's anger gave way to a hollow laugh. You'll regret this, Mira, he said coldly. You'll see that no one else will ever love you the way I did. Mira walked out, her heart pounding. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to rebuild, even if it meant starting from nothing. In the months that followed, Mira focused on her boutique, pouring her energy into her work. She started therapy to understand the choices she had made and began to rediscover the person she once was. Aaron, meanwhile, moved on with his life, eventually finding peace and even a new beginning with someone else.